and welcome to Exchange Server 2016 Compliance Management. So when it comes to Exchange Server compliance, it is really important to understand that the emails these days are really reliable source of communication, and whenever you send and receive emails, all those emails are stored in a place, and you need to make sure that those emails that is like in a form of data is going to be stored for long period of time sometimes. For example, let me just give you an example. So there are some emails that you always want to keep them with you, and there are some emails that you do not want to keep them. So for example, there are some compliance standards like HIPAA and ISO. So those standards defines that how can you manage or how can you create policies for your organization, or how can you just follow those standards in order to be in compliance. So Exchange Server 2016 and Exchange Server 2010 and other versions, they come within those compliances, like they follow those standards, and they come up with some tools already, so that you can just use them and make sure that you are in compliance. And being in compliance means that the data that you have, or the email system that you have, for example, emails these days is really a reliable form of communication, reliable way of communication. And whenever you send and receive emails, those emails are like in form of data, so all those data is very valuable to you. And the other thing is that it is also important for organizations to formulate messaging policies that is going to dictate the fair use of their messaging system. And you have to like provide user guidelines like how they need to act on policies where it is required. So emails are valuable data for all organization, and email lifecycle is also important. You need to just follow the compliances tools. You need to follow the compliance. You need to follow the standards in order to make sure that the life cycle of your emails is going to be based on those standards, based on those policies. So like the other thing that we have is like retention of messages, like for how long, for how long, or for the length of time, based on business, legal, and regulatory requirements. So what are you doing in here is you're following the compliance, you're following the standards, where you're just making sure that your email life cycle is based on those standards. The retention that you have is based on those standards. So that's how you are just creating those compliances or those policies in order to make sure that the data or the emails that you have is going to be with you. So one other thing that I want to give you a good example of, like in old days, the backups and restore required lots of time and money. Like with old version of Exchange, where you had no such compliances tools, what you were doing was, for example, Jeff is a user account, and he lost his emails. So what you were doing at that time, you were running a backup, like a full backup, and then like restoring a full database, where you were just spending a lot of time, and then you're spending money because you had to back up the entire database, even though you needed to just have a single email address. For example, you only need to back up a single email address, and then what you were doing was like you had to back up like the entire database, and then that was taking too much space, and then you had to spend a lot of time to restore it, and then you had to spend a lot of money because you had to purchase more storage. And policies always needs to be in place to keep your organizations with compliances, because if your organization is not based on compliance, like it's not following the compliance's rules, like HIPAA and like ISO, what's going to happen is that most of the time it is sentenced to jail, and most of the time you will have to pay penalty, because what you're doing is like you're not following the compliances that is given to you. So if the auditors, like from government or from any other organization, comes in and check that you're not following those rules, like your backup systems are not accurate, like for example, they just come in and they tell you, okay, we need to just find emails from Jeff like 2 years back from now. You have to give it to us. So what are you gonna do now? If you're not following the compliances and you do not have like standards and policies in place, what's going to happen is that you will be in trouble. So make sure that you follow the compliance. Compliance tools are used in Exchange Server these days, like in Exchange Server 2016. What you got is, for example, let me start with, for example, in-place archiving. If you see here, we got in-place archiving. What's archiving? So it is archiving all your email messages. So whenever you send and receive email messages, what it is doing is that it is creating a file, PST file, and then you are just storing all your emails in there, and it is storing a copy of your emails in server. But whenever you enable archiving for a mailbox, what it is doing is it is just archiving all those emails that user sends, receives, deletes. It is archiving it, and the good thing is that it is archiving it in a different place. So what's happening is that if the user loses the emails and you are no longer able to find those emails, you can use in place archiving at that time. So it helps you to regain control of your organization messaging data by eliminating the need for personal store, PST, which is the PST, and it allows users to store messages in archive mailbox as accessible with your Outlook and Outlook Web Access. So it is creating like a separate archive mailbox. Whenever you enable archiving for a user, it creates a separate mailbox for archiving in your Outlook or in your Outlook Web Access, and then your whatever you're just sending, receiving, storing emails, it is archiving it in there. So in case if you delete anything from your mailbox, you can still just have access. You can still have access to that deleted mailbox in your archive, because archive is a different thing than your mailbox. Like it is a separate archiving mailbox. So that's a good thing. So your emails are still there. So this is a good compliance tool that you can use to keep your emails safe. And then there is one other thing that we have is in place hold and uh, uh, litigation hold. Litigation hold. So when a reasonable expectation of litigation exists, organizations are always required to preserve electronically stored information, and it includes emails that relevant to the case. In place hold actually allows you to search and preserve messages matching query parameters. And then what is hold? Litigation hold allows you to place all items in a mailbox on hold. So it holds all your mailbox. So it holds your mailbox. So what are you doing in here? You're holding all those emails. What you're trying to do in here is you're not trying to let it be deleted. You're holding it for a while so that everything is in there, all your messages are in there, and they are protected from permanent deletion. So you're protecting your emails from permanent deletion. So So there are some email messages that is really important to your organization, and you always want to keep them because those email contains very valuable information. So what you can do is you can put them in litigation hold, which is going to protect it from permanent deletion, modification, and tampering, and can be preserved indefinitely or for a specific period. You can specify a period. That's what you can do. So these are the important compliance thing where you're just keeping all your data secure. You're keeping making sure that they are always in there. They're not deleted. So this is like two different things. And one other thing that we have is in place e-discovery. I really like this in place e-discovery. So let me give you an example. So one day I was working with Exchange Server 2013, and Exchange Server 2013, what happened was like the user came to me and said, hey, you know what, all my emails are deleted from Outlook and I don't know where they are. I was like, really? And then when I went in there and I did some checkup and I tested everything, I went to their deleted items. I tried to recover it, and nothing showed up. And then I told him, "Did you delete them?" He said, "No, no, I didn't delete it. I'm sure I didn't delete it." So you cannot say anything to your customers or your clients. No, you're lying. So I knew that he deleted it, but he deleted it using shift, delete, and enter. So when you press shift and delete it just deletes it permanently from your Outlook. So what I did is like I went to e-discovery options, which is like a compliance tool by Exchange Server, and then I searched his mailbox, and then I found out that he got messages in there, and I was able to recover all his email messages. So that's a good example. Uh, Whenever you delete your messages permanently from your Outlook, uh, the email messages are still on your server, and you can use e-discovery, which is going to allow you to search mailbox data across your Exchange organization. It is going to just give you preview search results. You will be able to preview your search results. You will be able to copy your search reserve results. And then one other good thing that you can do is you can export all those emails into PST, get that PST file, give it to your user, and then he can import it to his Outlook again. So that's a good thing with e-discovery. So I'm gonna just show you practically that how e-discovery works. So stay tuned. So one other thing that we have is called administrators audit logging. So administrator audit logging that you see in here is it allows you to enable like audit logs so that you are always informed of changes made by administrators to your Exchange server. So you always want to make sure that whenever administrators make changes to your Exchange server, like they delete something, they create a mailbox, they make any changes to the settings, you need to know it. So you can enable administrator audit login, and then you will be aware of all those changes. And one other thing is you might use administrator audit logging as part of your change control process or track change and access to configuration and recipient for compliance purposes. So your organization is very restricted. What they want to do is they want to make sure that anytime any administrator tries to make any configuration changes in my Exchange server in my organization, I need to know it. So this is for change control. Whenever someone tries to make changes, you need to know it and you must know it. So make sure you enable administrator audit logging. So one other thing that you have is mailbox audit logging. So mailbox audit logging is another thing is it's because mailboxes can potentially contain sensitive, high business impact information and personally identifiable information. So in your mailboxes, you always have informations like emails, you have attachments, you have documents. So all those informations are really sensitive for most of the organizations, and they always want to make sure that the mailboxes are always secure. And they most some mailboxes, like mailboxes for finance department, mailboxes for like invoices at Elmjotech, quote at Elmjotech, CEO at Elmjotech. So you always want to make sure that those are secure. So what you can do in here is you can just enable mailbox audit logging, and it is always important that you track who logs on to the mailboxes in your organization and what actions are taking. It's especially important to track access to mailboxes by users other than the mailbox owner. So if I am the owner of Elmjo Elmjo at elmjotech.com and or .local, and someone else tries to access my mailbox, I need to know it. So this is very important thing. Whenever you have mailboxes where you got very important emails that is sensitive, secure, and confidential. So using mailbox audit logging, you can also just log mailbox access by administrator, delegates, uh, including like administrator with full access permission and mailbox owners. So this is very important thing that you can do. The other thing that we have is data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is a mechanism, is very important thing in Exchange Server, which includes 80 sensitive information types that are ready for you to use in your data loss prevention policies, where you can just define different type of policies, like how they for example, the attachments should be uh, sent and received, like if an attachment contains such information, should it be allowed or not. So all those kind of things, what you're trying to do in here, you're trying to make sure that whenever someone from your inside organization tries to send something which is very important and you do not want to lose those information, you can simply implement data loss prevention. You're making sure that your data is not leaked, your data is not stolen. So you can use data loss prevention, and it is part of compliance tool. Another thing that we have is transport rules. Transport rules is one of the other exchange feature or mechanism or set of standards, set of policies, set of rules, set of conditions, where you can define different conditions, you can define rules, and you can define actions. For example, if an email comes from outside with for example, picture at kick.com, which is really not a good name, or which is a domain name that you really don't like. So what you want to say, if an email comes from outside with picture at kick.com and it includes an attachment of .exe, do not allow it. So what you're doing is you're creating transport rules where you can use transport rule conditions and exceptions to define when a transport rule is applied, and then apply a transport rule action on messages when the condition is met. So different condition on different messages, like if your user from inside, Jeff, tries to send an email to a user outside who is, for example, Frank, do not allow him to send. So you are defining transport rules to either allow, deny, or like it's like if this matches this, allow, if this matches this, block. So you're creating different transport rules. So this is compliance management in Exchange Server 2016, where you're securing your emails, where you're making sure that you always have your emails with you. You are not like you're not totally losing your emails, it's not being deleted permanently. So you are storing your emails in a correct way, and you're securing it, you're using it properly, by following the compliances or standards that is giving to you. So I hope you have learned something, and I'll see you in next video.